following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Newsline Live with me, Neha Khanna. Let's bring you up to speed on all the top national and international stories that we're tracking at this hour, starting with the Israel-Hamas war, which has now entered its 46th day. While Israel has expanded its operations into southern Gaza, a truce might be on the cards with the deal to release the hostages. Let's get you all the developments. Israel and Hamas are now closer to an agreement on the release of some hostages. Military operations at the Indonesian hospital are in complete compliance with international law. That's what Ophir Falk, foreign policy advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has said. 100 patients have been evacuated from the Indonesian hospital. According to Gaza health officials, 28 newborns have been transferred from Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital to Egypt. World Health Organization official Michael Ryan has warned of possible breakout of epidemics in Gaza amid the ongoing war. Yemen's Houthis have released a video of the Red Sea hijacking a cargo ship. Over 13,000 Palestinians killed in the war, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Hamas says it's nearing a truce with Israel, even as Gaza continues to be under bombardment from the Israeli Defense Forces. The Hamas group has delivered its response to Qatari mediators. While the statement provided no further details, a Hamas official told Al Jazeera television that negotiations revolved around how long the truce would last, arrangements for delivery of aid into Gaza, and exchange of Israeli hostages, mostly women and children, held by Hamas for Palestinian prisoners in Israel. The modalities of the agreement will be announced by Qatar, which is mediating in the negotiations. I have read it. In the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict, President Joe Biden has signaled progress in negotiations for the release of the 240 hostages. The discussions, mediated by Qatar, began after a deadly attack by Hamas, marking a tragic day in Israel's history. While the proposed deal involves exchanging 50 hostages for a 3-day ceasefire, facilitating increased emergency aid to reach Gaza civilians, the White House and Israeli officials initially denied the existence of a finalized agreement. However, they have acknowledged progress in the talks.
So today, I think you know Secretary Austin is in Kyiv to meet with Ukraine's leaders. I know this is of great interest to all of you. I just want to let you know we're still working this hour by hour. I do not have an update for you on the hostage deal that we're trying to negotiate. But as you heard the Deputy National Security Advisor say yesterday, we believe we're closer than we've ever been. So we're hopeful. But there's still work to be done, and nothing is done until it's all done. So we're going to keep working on this. We're also working to increase the flow of life-saving humanitarian assistance, food, water, medicine. We're calling for respecting the international law in terms of minimizing the loss of innocent lives. And of course, we're continuing to advocate for humanitarian pauses so that people can get out of harm's way and that aid and assistance can get in. Over the last couple of days, the 18th and the 19th of November, almost 100 trucks carrying humanitarian aid were able to enter Gaza. That brings the total to over 1,260. And then following Israel's announcement that it's allowing fuel now into Gaza to support non-governmental organizations at our strong request, we are now tracking that 6 trucks have crossed down into Gaza with approximately 18,000 gallons of fuel. That will help support food distribution, and it'll help generators for the hospital so that they can keep working. The total number of U.S. citizens that we've been able to move out of Gaza through that Rafah crossing is now up to 800. We're continuing to work that every day as well.
The Israeli army released videos on Monday of what they described as a weaponry lab under a mosque in Gaza City's Zaytun neighborhood. The army spokesperson Daniel Hagari said Israeli forces discovered a factory that produced weapons and unmanned aerial vehicles and a tunnel shaft in search of the Gazan mosque.
188th Brigade located inside a mosque, a factory that produced weapons and UAVs. I want you to understand, a mosque in the area of Zaytun has been used as a factory for the production of weapons. Soldiers entered the mosque and conducted a search, working in cooperation with soldiers from the Yahalom unit, and after the forces checked that there were no traps, they discovered a tunnel shaft. In addition to this tunnel shaft, the soldiers went further below and discovered a workshop for making rockets.
Relatives of the 240 people who are currently being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza have urged the far-right Israeli lawmakers not to pursue the proposed capital punishment for the captured Palestinian militants, saying that even talk of executing them could endanger the lives of the hostages. Far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has called for the death penalty, which is dormant on Israel's law books. Some of the relatives of the hostages say they are worried that publicity around the capital punishment debate could invite reprisals, even as hopes of a deal to free the hostages is growing. The hostages have already been threatened with execution by Hamas and are at risk of being hurt or killed in the military offensive launched by Israel in response to the 7th October attacks.
Look at us, but not as an outsider. Look at us as if she's your sister, as if he's your child, your grandchild. Would you risk anything that could now harm his life? When he's back, prosecute them. Raise this discussion again. But he's not here because of this. He may never return.
Some relatives of the Israeli hostages have said they're disappointed after meeting with members of Israel's war cabinet. The relatives of the 240 hostages have been advocating for the Israeli government to get their loved ones back as soon as possible. Thousands of them recently, in fact, held a 5-day march from Tel Aviv to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's house in Jerusalem, where he eventually promised that they could meet with members of Israel's war cabinet this week. After a meeting with the war cabinet and the ministers, a handful of family members, in fact, were able to meet them. The families have expressed the hope that the Israeli government would prioritize the return of the hostages first and foremost.
I went in with one single question, to know if all of the war cabinet supports the same stand that Gantz and Eisenkot took a couple of days ago when they met with us, when they said absolutely clear, without hesitation, that bringing out the hostages is the top priority as far as they're concerned. And now when we've met with the entire cabinet, what we've heard is that taking down Hamas and bringing the hostages are as important, are equally important.
Leaders from BRICS nations are slated to convene an emergency video conference Tackling the pressing Middle East situation with a specific focus on the Gaza Strip, Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to join the discussions as South Africa takes charge of the rotating BRICS presidency. The statement reveals that leaders from the original BRICS quartet, Brazil, Russia, India and China, will gather under South Africa's presidency for this pivotal virtual meeting. Additionally, leaders from the newly inducted BRICS nations, Saudi Arabia, Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran and the United Arab Emirates have received invitations. Following an opening address by President Cyril Ramaphosa, representatives from the BRICS countries and the invited states will make their statements, shedding light on the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Notably, Chinese President Xi Jinping has accepted the invitation from the South African president to participate in this extraordinary virtual summit on the Israel-Palestine issue. President Xi will deliver his remarks from Beijing. We will keep you posted on this developing story. Arab and Muslim ministers have jointly called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Their delegation currently in Beijing has initiated a tour aimed at advocating for an end to hostilities between Israel and Hamas and facilitating humanitarian aid into the distressed Palestinian enclave of Gaza. China is playing host to this crucial delegation comprising foreign ministers from the Palestinian Authority, Indonesia, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. The primary objective is to find a resolution to halt Israel's offensive in the Gaza Strip. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has emphasized that there is an urgent need for global intervention to end this conflict. The Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud has sought increased cooperation from China to expedite resolution of this crisis. This diplomatic mission plans to engage with officials representing each of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. Additionally, the delegation is exerting pressure on the West, urging a rejection of Israel's justifications for its actions against Palestinians as self-defense. The extraordinary joint Islamic Arab Summit in Riyadh this month also urged the International Criminal Court to investigate war crimes and crimes against humanity that they have accused Israel of committing in Palestinian territories. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has defended the military's actions in Gaza. He spoke as Israelis marched to his office in Jerusalem seeking government action for the release of the hostages being held currently by Hamas terrorists and also pro-Palestinian protests worldwide demanding a humanitarian ceasefire to save Gazans who are trapped in the Gazan enclave.
It's by the laws of war. That's how our army works. The most moral army in the world. Humanitarian aid is also vital to maintain international support. Without humanitarian aid, even our best friends will find it difficult to support us over time. And it will be very difficult for us to continue the war until the end.
Israel has made a significant announcement today, declaring that it has decided to ban terror organization Lashkar-e-Taiba based in Pakistan. In a statement issued by the Israeli embassy in New Delhi, the country has said to symbolize the marking of the 15th year of commemoration of the Mumbai terror attacks. The State of Israel has listed Lashkar-e-Taiba as a terror organization. Notably, the Indian government did not request Israel to do so. However, the state formally completed all necessary procedures and has satisfied all required checks and regulations to the result of introducing Lashkar-e-Taiba into the Israeli list of terror organizations that are now proscribed. While Israel only lists terror organizations who are actively operating against it from within or outside its borders or in a similar manner to India, those globally recognized by the UN Security Council or the US State Department. The Israeli Ministries of Defense and Foreign Affairs have jointly worked in the last few months towards an expedited and extraordinary listing of the Lashkar-e-Taiba organization on this date to highlight the importance of a unified global front in combating terrorism. All right, let's now get you some domestic news. The Manipur government has informed the Supreme Court today that 5 crore rupees has been credited to the bank accounts of women who were victims of horrific sexual assault and other crimes that were reported in the state on the 3rd of May. The state government, however, hasn't clarified how many women have been given this compensation. In an affidavit filed in the apex court, the Manipur government has said there were no reports of vandalism or destruction of religious buildings in the 2 districts of Noni and Senapati. The government's clarification comes in response to the Supreme Court's September order, where it had asked the state government to identify all religious buildings in the state that had been vandalized during the violence. All right, let's now get you the latest on the India-Australia 2+2 ministerial dialogue in Delhi. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong held wide-ranging talks to advance the strategic partnership in the national capital. Jaishankar posted on Twitter that a statement saying our foreign ministers' framework dialogue will advance our strategic partnership. The two sides are focusing their talks on improving ties in sectors such as security, defence, economic, science and technology. Australian Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles and Foreign Minister Penny Wong also met with National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and discussed a range of issues from global to regional developments. The leaders highlighted the common values, shared heritage and mutual respect between the two sides that formed a solid basis to take forward common strategic interests. Authorities are tirelessly working to rescue the 41 workers trapped inside the partially collapsed tunnel in Uttarkashi in Uttarakhand. A 6-inch pipe has been successfully installed into the debris, enabling the provision of solid food and improving communication with the trapped workers. The first visuals of the workers have come out after an endoscopic camera was sent in through a pipe. The camera shows the workers in their work gear and waving at the team. The rescue workers have asked them to move closer to the camera. Here is now the latest on the rescue operations that are underway. Workers have been trapped in the tunnel for 170 hours now, and rescue operations are expected to take another 4 to 5 days. To facilitate this, a 6-inch pipe has been successfully installed in the debris, serving the dual purpose of providing food to the trapped workers and improving communication with them. The Indian Air Force employed C-17 and C-130J Super Hercules transport aircraft for the transportation of critical equipment to the site. The Defence Research and Development Organisation has dispatched 2 robots weighing 20 kilos and 50 kilos respectively to aid the rescue efforts. Prime Minister Modi has reviewed the rescue work and spoken to Chief Minister Dhami. He has emphasized the importance of maintaining the morale of the trapped workers, recognizing the psychological aspect of the situation. Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami has expressed a commitment to evacuating all the trapped workers on a war footing, underlining the urgency and intensity of the rescue efforts. The rescue ops involve multiple strategies. The National Highways and Infrastructure Development Corporation is resuming horizontal boring from the Silkyara end using an auger boring machine to rescue workers. SJVNL's first machine for constructing the vertical rescue tunnel has reached the tunnel site, and operations are commencing after the Border Roads Organisation completed road access. Construction of a 480-meter rescue tunnel from the Barcode end by Tehri Hydro Development Corporation is underway. Rail Vikas Nigam Limited is transporting machinery for micro-tunneling through horizontal drilling and from Nashik and Delhi for the rescue operation. The Oil and Natural Gas Corporation is mobilizing machinery for vertical boring from the US, Mumbai as well as other parts of India. The BRO has accomplished a commendable feat by constructing the approach road for vertical drilling by RVNL and SJVNL within 48 hours. Work is ongoing to create an approach road for ONGC as well.
But I think the team here have done a wonderful job. It's one of the options. The 900 pipe which is there, which I've seen and I'm going to go have another look at this morning, it's by far the best and fastest means to get them in. But it has its technical difficulties, and that's why we're doing multiple rescue missions. You know, we've got mission from the top, missions from the front, mission from the side. We've got the men are coming home. We're just not sure which door they're going to use, right? We're knocking on the front door where the avalanche is, with several ways. We're knocking on the side door. Maybe that will work. We're knocking on the top door. We're knocking on all these doors. Which one opens? Not sure. I'll have to ask.
How many locations you identified for the vertical drilling?
Two. Yeah.
Both are from Silkyara side.
Yeah.
Not from
no.
Barcoat.
No. There's a perfect. Just so we don't get run over, because we want no one else injured with this. Okay, so everyone off the road. The difficulty is come off, because seriously this thing will squash you. Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to rescue these men. When I arrived here, I said there's 41 men coming home and there's no one else going to be hurt, and that's the mission. And everyone here from all the government agencies, that's what they're working on. And I am absolutely convinced, and all the agencies are here, they're working closely together and the mission is clear. 41 men are coming home. When? I don't know when. I don't know if it's 3 days or 4 days or whatever. What I know is they were dancing with Diwali when they went in, and my plan is that they'll be singing Christmas carols at Christmas, sometime between Diwali and Christmas. They're coming home. Exactly when? I'm not sure.
Will be sure.
I'm sure of the rescue. Absolutely sure.
The Defence Research and Development Organization has dispatched 2 robots weighing 20 and 50 kilos. To aid in the rescue efforts, these robots are designed to navigate on the ground, but concerns have been raised due to the loose ground in the area. Additional machinery is expected to arrive in a day or two.
हम संभावित जो भी हमको करनी है चिकित्सा की व्यवस्था, उसकी कंसर्निंग हमने विजिट किया है कि जब भी वो बाहर निकलेंगे तो हमें क्या क्या व्यवस्था बनानी है और क्या क्या चीज़ ऐड करनी है। कैसी कंडीशंस हैं फिलहाल यहाँ पे लोगों के बारे में नहीं, हम जो बाहर की अपनी व्यवस्था देखने के लिए आए हैं उनकी कंडीशन के बारे में तो जब वो बाहर निकलेंगे तभी हम बता पाएंगे, और उसी तरह से एक्सपर्ट एसेस करेंगे और उसी तरह से हम जिस भी सेंटर में लेबल के सेंटर में ले जाना होगा ले जाएंगे। वो उस समय एक्सपर्ट द्वारा जो एसेस किया जाएगा उसी तरह से टर्शरी या सेकेंडरी लेवल पे वहीं शिफ्ट करेंगे। नहीं, हम अभी वो देखने नहीं, हमने खाली बाहर से व्यवस्था की किस तरह प्लान करेंगे, शिफ्ट करेंगे।
जैसा कि इन्फॉर्म किया गया 41 लोग अंदर हैं जो सेफ है, उनको खाना की सामान भी अंदर पाइपलाइन एक छोटी उसके तहत मुहैया करवाई जा रही है, बिजली की सप्लाई दी जा रही है और लॉजिस्टिक की अभी कोई दिक्कत नहीं है। उनकी सेफ्टी अभी जो इंश्योर की गई है तो सेफ है, और एजेंसी NHIDCL जो इस पे काम कर रही है, तो जो एक्सपर्ट्स भी अब इकट्ठे हो गए और भी लोगों से इनसे ओपिनियन लिया जा रहा है, तो जो बेस्ट पॉसिबल है उस तरह से हम रास्ता बनाकर उनको बाहर निकालने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। तो इसमें बेसिकली अभी टेक्निकल काम है, जो हैवी मशीनरी और एक्सपर्ट्स का काम है, तो NDRF फ्रंट में नहीं है, लेकिन हमारी इन एक्सपर्ट्स और एजेंसीज के साथ निरंतर हम कांटेक्ट में, हमारी 2 टीम वहां पर डिप्लॉयड है, शिफ्ट से वो इनके साथ वहां पर स्थिति का भी मुआयना कर रहे हैं। दूसरा, अगर इस तरह का एक्सेस पाइप के थ्रू या ड्रिल करके कोई भी एक्सेस बनाया जाता है तो उसमें NDRF किस तरह से टीम हमारी एक्सपर्ट्स अंदर जाएंगे, उनको निकालेंगे, उसकी भी प्लानिंग और ट्रेनिंग और एग्जीक्यूशन ऑलरेडी हम ग्राउंड पर कर रहे हैं।
International tunneling expert Arnold Dix reached Silkyara tunnel site and expressed confidence in the ongoing rescue efforts. Listen in.
But I think the team here have done a wonderful job. It's one of the options, the 900 pipe which is there, which I've seen and I'm going to go have another look at this morning. It's by far the best and fastest means to get them in, but it has its technical difficulties, and that's why we're doing multiple rescue missions. You know, we've got mission from the top, missions from the front.
The Supreme Court has chided the governments of Punjab, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh and Haryana over the worsening pollution in the National Capital Region. The Supreme Court has directed the governments of all the 4 states to ensure immediate cessation of crop burning, and the local SHOs have been directed to ensure that these instructions are followed under the overall supervision of the chief secretaries of the state. The two-judge bench said little attempt has been made to understand why farmers go in for stubble burning. The apex court also asked the Punjab government to immediately halt burning of crop residue and take a cue from Haryana about the financial incentives plan for farmers. The governments, instead of playing a blame game, should focus on stopping the burning of waste in the open. That's what the Supreme Court said, while asking for a committee to look into the aspect of non-implementation of colour-coded stickers on old cars. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been controversially quoted as having said during the height of the COVID crisis, "Just let people die," rather than impose a second national lockdown. That is what an inquiry into how Britain handled the COVID pandemic has now revealed.
British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak reportedly said the government should, quote, "just let people die" during the COVID-19 pandemic rather than impose a second lockdown. That's according to Patrick Vallance, who testified on Monday as part of an inquiry into how Britain handled the crisis. Vallance was the government's chief scientific advisor during the pandemic. He made a note in his diary on October 25, 2020, about a meeting involving then Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Sunak, who was finance minister. The diary entry recorded how Dominic Cummings, Johnson's most senior advisor at the time, relayed to Vallance what he said he heard at the meeting. Vallance quoted Cummings in his diary as saying, quote, "Rishi thinks just let people die and that's okay. This all feels like a complete lack of leadership." A spokesperson for Sunak said the Prime Minister would set out his position when he gives evidence to the inquiry. Previous evidence has shown Sunak was branded as Dr. Death by one science advisor for his policy in the summer of 2020, encouraging Britons to eat at pubs and restaurants. Senior officials have repeatedly said the government was unprepared for the pandemic. More than 220,000 people died in Britain, and large sections of the economy were shut down. The inquiry is set to run until the summer of 2026.
The other big international story we're tracking, investors in OpenAI are considering legal action against the board after the removal of CEO Sam Altman. These investors are worried that the hundreds of millions invested in OpenAI, a crown jewel in some of their portfolios, could suffer catastrophic losses as a result of what appears to be a potential collapse of the hottest AI startup in the rapidly growing generative sector. Let's listen in to what experts had to say.
Now, Microsoft may decide to give him a lot of leeway because they benefit from this happening, but they can't give him infinite leeway because that becomes impossible. You have a public company you're running. OpenAI was not a public company. There's a very different situation in a public company. So he will have to constrain himself. There's no choice. And if he can't constrain himself, then he would end up leaving and doing something else. And by the way, if I was Microsoft, I wouldn't have hired him. I would have told him to start a new company and given him a bunch of money to start a new company. I actually was kind of surprised that Microsoft hired him because it opens more exposure for Microsoft and actually constrains Sam from doing all the things he would want to do. If he had known, he would have taken action. This would have been a very easy thing for him to prevent if he knew about it, which is precisely why the board never told Microsoft, for example. It would have been trivially easy for a CEO to do that. But what I think happens with a lot of guys, and this happened with Elon Musk as well, is that you can either have a mission that you're passionate about, or you can be distracted by 50 missions. And what was happening for him was because he was taking on other projects that are unrelated to the core mission, you cannot be passionate about 50 missions. It's very hard to do. And that's the risk that I think Sam was falling into and that Elon has definitely fallen into. But one of the good things that's going to happen out of this is organizations will realize they have to look at multiple models. They can't just put all their eggs in one basket. This idea that one model will rule them all is a completely wrong idea. Because for different use cases, for different situations, different models will be better. Innovation is happening very quickly. So if there is one benefit out of this craziness is that people start thinking beyond a model and start thinking about, I will need the right model for the right job, and I need a flexible system that can do that. That would be a good thing out of this craziness.
My worst fears are that we, the field, the technology, the industry, cause significant harm.
That Microsoft has become the player. So it's insane. Like Google was, Gemini was their big play, their hope, because Bard hasn't done it. Gemini gets pushed back till January. The worst thing that could have possibly happened, because if Google right now had Gemini to come out and and it was good, it was like what it's supposed to be, they would be they're going crazy right now. But Microsoft is they're holding all the keys. They are the dominant player in AI by far. The future of AI will never be boring. That's the only thing that we really know. Because it's funny, news and like companies making or breaking even happen at AI breakneck speeds. Think about what happened over a news cycle of a weekend would have, in the past been like 6 months, So yeah, it's gonna just keep going as fast as we've seen, and it's fun.
On Monday, OpenAI named Emmett Shear, who was once the boss of the video game streaming service Twitch, as its new chief executive.
OpenAI's recently fired CEO Sam Altman is taking a position at Microsoft, while his former firm has named Emmett Shear, who was once the boss of the video game streaming service Twitch, as its new interim chief executive. The C-suite staff shakeup capped a tumultuous weekend for the startup, synonymous with the artificial intelligence boom. The appointments, which settled late Sunday, followed Altman's abrupt ousting just days earlier as the CEO of the ChatGPT maker and ended speculation he could return. Microsoft is an investor in OpenAI, and Altman's move, along with another OpenAI co-founder, helps the software giant keep key talent away from rivals like Google and Amazon. Microsoft shares rose 2% in Monday afternoon trading and hit an all-time high. The startup's newly appointed interim boss moved quickly to dismiss speculation that OpenAI's board ousted Altman due to a spat over the safety of powerful AI models. Shear vowed to open an investigation into his predecessor's firing. The startup dismissed Altman on Friday after what an internal memo seen by Reuters characterized as a breakdown of communications. On Monday, stakes rose further. According to a letter seen by Reuters, a member of the OpenAI board and nearly 500 employees threatened to leave the company unless the board stepped down and reinstated Altman and another former executive. OpenAI did not immediately respond to a request for comment. A source familiar with the matter said employees of OpenAI, which is governed by a nonprofit, are split between different ideals. Some are focused on building artificial intelligence and against moving too fast without sufficient guardrails, while others recruited after the success of ChatGPT are more interested in quickly building and launching products akin to the traditional idea of a Silicon Valley startup, the source said.
In a recent development, US President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping agreed to schedule another meeting, and that's been confirmed by the White House. The leaders had, in fact, met earlier on the outskirts of San Francisco, where they reached a consensus to re-establish military-to-military communications between the two countries. According to White House spokesperson John Kirby, while the two leaders affirmed plans for a subsequent meeting, a specific date has not yet been determined. Kirby emphasized the significance of restarting military communications, saying what's really important now is that the military communications will begin to start and even down to the theater commander level.
So today, I think Secretary Austin is in Kyiv to meet with Ukraine's leaders. I know this is of great interest to all of you. I just want to let you know we're still working this hour by hour. I do not have an update for you on the hostage deal that we're trying to negotiate. But as you heard the Deputy National Security Advisor say yesterday, we believe we're closer than we've ever been. So we're hopeful. But there's still work to be done, and nothing is done until it's all done. So we're going to keep working on this. We're also working to increase the flow of life-saving humanitarian assistance, food, water, medicine. We're calling for respecting the international law in terms of minimizing the loss of innocent lives. And of course, we're continuing to advocate for humanitarian pauses so that people can get out of harm's way and that aid and assistance can get in. Over the last couple of days, the 18th and the 19th of November, almost 100 trucks carrying humanitarian aid were able to enter Gaza. That brings the total to over 1,260. And then following Israel's announcement that it's allowing fuel now into Gaza to support non-governmental organizations at our strong request, we are now tracking that 6 trucks have crossed down into Gaza with approximately 18,000 gallons of fuel. That will help support food distribution and it will help generators for the hospital so that they can keep working. The total number of U.S. citizens that we've been able to move out of Gaza through that Rafah crossing is now up to 800. We're continuing to work that every day as well.
Trump's recent rhetoric, marked by intense attacks on domestic opponents during a Veterans Day speech, has triggered concerns about his authoritarian tendencies. Unlike his prior focus on external targets, these pointed attacks have drawn comparisons to totalitarian leaders of the past, echoing language used by historical authoritarian figures. That's what's been pointed out by many Trump critics. At a New Hampshire rally on the 14th of November, Trump vowed to root out communists, Marxists, fascists and radical left thugs within the US. Well, that's the language he used, alleging election fraud cost him the 2020 presidency.
With your help, your love and your vote, we will put America first. And today, especially in honor of our great veterans on Veterans Day, we pledge to you that we will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country, that lie and steal and cheat on elections and will do anything possible. They'll do anything, whether legally or illegally, to destroy America and to destroy the American dream.
Experts previously concerned about Trump's admiration for foreign dictators and disregard for democratic values have now highlighted his shift towards targeting perceived internal enemies, a trait associated with dangerous totalitarian leaders. Trump's history of incendiary remarks, including recent comments linking immigrants to poisoning the blood of our country, as he put it, have intensified worries about his approach as the frontrunner for the Republican nomination in the 2024 election against Biden. The global far-right is ecstatic about Javier Milei's resounding election win in Argentina, a victory that experts anticipate will transform Buenos Aires into a burgeoning hub for the radical populist right. Trump and former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, who are eyeing a return to power in 2024 and 2026 respectively, have expressed joy over Milei's success. Milei has already announced plans to travel to the US and Israel after his victory, with the pledge to relocate Argentina's embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Born in 1970, Javier Milei made his mark by transitioning from a member of a Rolling Stones cover band to a politician. His journey in the political arena has been notable, renowned for his outspoken and occasionally controversial economic commentary on Argentinian television. Milei secured a seat in the Congress in 2021, representing the Libertarian Party, Libertad Avanza. His eccentric and unconventional style earned him the nickname El Loco, which means the Mad Man. Not just Trump and Bolsonaro, even Portugal's André Ventura has praised Milei's struggle to defend society, as he put it. Italy's Salvini, Spain's Abascal and Hungary's Novak have extended their congratulations as well.
resacas, cómo olvidarlas. Voy llevando mis canciones, son derrota en mis amores. Si viene el estallido, si viene el estallido, de mi guitarra, de tu...
Javier Milei achieved a sweeping win in 21 of Argentina's 23 provinces, but narrowly lost in Buenos Aires, a Peronist stronghold. Experts have advised against viewing it as a major conservative shift, suggesting voters have expressed discontent with the Peronists amid the economic crisis. Javier Milei, an Argentine libertarian, secured a significant win in the presidential runoff election, vowing to usher in a new era for his country. With voters pinning their hopes on this political outsider, the focus lies on addressing the country's multiple challenges that include triple-digit inflation and impending economic recession, growing poverty, all in need of urgent resolution.
Argentina elected the right-wing libertarian Javier Milei as its new president on Sunday. Voters rolled the dice on an outsider with radical views to fix an economy battered by runaway inflation, giving Milei, an economist and former TV pundit, a clear win with 56% of the ballots. He appears to have successfully harnessed a wave of public anger with Argentina's political mainstream.
Today brings an end to the impoverishing model of the omnipresent state that only benefits some while the majority of Argentines suffer. Today we retake the path that made this country great. Today we embrace the ideas of libertarianism.
Milei's rival, Economy Minister Sergio Massa, conceded before official results were out. In a speech that lightly veiled his centrist concerns over Milei, Massa said Argentina expected the new president to, quote, provide certainty and guarantees to the functioning of political, social and economic systems. Yet it is Milei's promise to shake everything up that seems to have lured these celebrating supporters to his camp.
Argentina needed a change, and that's why I bet on this new proposal.
I want a change for my country that I deeply love. We've been suffering many years of decadence, and this seemed to me like a good option. No more of the same. Enough already with Peronism. We already know them.
The challenges facing Milei are enormous, from the government and central bank's empty coffers to a $44 billion debt program with the International Monetary Fund and inflation nearing 150%. He's pledging economic shock therapy with plans to shut the central bank, ditch the peso for the dollar and slash spending, pushing for minimal state intervention in line with the libertarian ethos. He used to carry around a chainsaw in a symbol of his planned cuts, but shelved it in recent weeks in favor of a more moderate image. The eccentric 53-year-old is also staunchly anti-abortion, backs looser gun laws, and has criticized the progressive Pope Francis. Milei faces a highly fragmented Congress with no single bloc having a majority. This means he will need backing from other factions to push through legislation. After October's first-round vote, Milei struck an uneasy alliance with the country's main conservative bloc. That helped him win middle-ground voters on Sunday, but it could also put the reins on some of his more extreme plans.
Taiwan's presidential frontrunner Lai Ching-te has chosen Tsai Be-kim as his running mate. Be-kim is a former envoy to the US who's popular in the Washington circles, but China considers him as a separatist. Lai and Xiao, both despised by China, face growing pressure as Taiwan asserts its sovereignty.
Taipei's former envoy to the United States has been named the vice presidential candidate for the upcoming election on Monday. Xiao Meiqing is a high-profile diplomat well known in Washington, but who Beijing denounces as a separatist. She will be running alongside Lai Ching-te, the ruling Democratic Progressive Party's presidential candidate.
I believe we have lots of common convictions. We are both willing to take on responsibility for Taiwan, with a common belief that Taiwan's democracy and freedom can last forever. That is our deepest connection.
The DPP champions Taiwan's separate identity from China, while the largest opposition party, the Kuomintang, traditionally favors close ties with Beijing. Lai has led in most opinion polls ahead of the election, which is taking place as Taiwan comes under increased pressure from China to accept its sovereignty claim. Xiao has been Taiwan's de facto ambassador to the United States since 2020. She has extensive connections in Washington. The Foreign Ministry accepted her resignation as U.S. envoy earlier on Monday. The United States, as with most countries, has no formal ties with Taiwan, but it's the island's most important international supporter and arms supplier. Like Lai, Xiao is despised by China, which has twice placed sanctions on her. China's foreign ministry declined to answer a question about Xiao, saying it was not a diplomatic issue. China's Taiwan Affairs Office on Wednesday referred to Lai and Xiao as an independence double act, adding that Taiwan's people were very clear about what their partnership meant for the situation in the Taiwan Strait. It did not elaborate. Lai dismissed China's comment.
China's thoughtless remarks on this election are sufficient to prove that China is intervening in this election, because none of the Chinese officials have gone through the baptism of democracy. So there is no reason for us to reply to these remarks.
Xiao was born in Japan to a Taiwanese father and American mother. Unusual in Taiwan, she uses an English spelling of her name based on its Taiwanese Hokkien pronunciation to underscore her identity as being Taiwanese and not Chinese.
Heavy rains from a tropical system turned deadly in the Dominican Republic over the weekend when urban flooding caused a highway wall to collapse. Rescuers retrieved bodies from the debris in Santo Domingo after the wall collapsed. The Public Works Department of the Dominican Republic reported at least 3 vehicles trapped when the wall collapsed amid the heavy rains. 9 people are reported to have died in this incident. Over the last 24 hours, the Caribbean island has experienced heavy downpours, thunderstorms and strong winds affecting multiple provinces. Authorities have declared a state of alert in 30 out of the country's 32 provinces. This year's UN Climate Conference in Dubai marks the world's 28th leadership gathering to confront global warming since the first conference of the parties in 1995. Here's a look at some key moments in the history of climate negotiations.
The world's 28th leadership gathering to confront the existential threat posed by climate change begins on November 30th in Dubai. As world leaders look to address our long-known problem, here's a look at some key moments in the history of climate negotiations. In 1990, at the UN's Second World Climate Conference, scientists highlight the risks of global warming to nature and society. British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher calls for binding emissions targets.
We need to speed up action and set ourselves higher targets and shorter deadlines.
In 1992, countries at the Rio Earth Summit sign on to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. It establishes the idea that developed countries must do more to tackle climate warming emissions. In 1995, the first Conference of the Parties, or COP, is held in Berlin. A final document calls for legally binding emissions targets. In 1997, at COP3 in Kyoto, Japan, parties agree to emissions cuts for developed countries. In 2005, the Kyoto Protocol goes into effect. It's a legally binding treaty in which 55 countries agree to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In 2009, COP15 talks in Copenhagen nearly collapse amid efforts to agree to a binding post-Kyoto framework. Countries instead vote to take note of a non-binding political statement. COP16, 17, and 18 all fail to set new binding emissions targets. Delegates in Doha at COP18 instead extended the Kyoto Protocol through 2020. In 2015, COP21 results in the Paris Agreement.
L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
The first global pact to call for increasingly ambitious emissions pledges from both developed and developing countries. Delegates also pledged to try to keep warming to within 1.5 degrees Celsius. In 2017, U.S. President Donald Trump pulls the U.S. out of the Paris Treaty.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord.
4 years later, in 2021, newly elected U.S. President Joe Biden rejoins the Paris Agreement. At COP26 later that year, the Glasgow Pact sets a goal of using less coal and resolves rules for trading carbon credits to offset emissions. In 2022, COP27 in Egypt marks a historic deal for a loss and damage fund for costly climate disasters, but does little to address the emissions fueling such disasters.
Well, that's all the time we have on this edition of News 9 Live. If you have been, thanks so much for watching.
ChatGPT. It can